Hello, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Ebony. If you're a returning subscriber, as always, thank you so much for being here. Today, we're getting into a video where I share my experience about living in North Carolina and sharing a little bit about it so that way you can determine if it's a good move for you. I specifically live in the Raleigh-Durham area, so let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the career market and the industries that are available. For me, I work in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, and if you're familiar with North Carolina, then you know that there's a huge area called the Research Triangle, which consists of Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. And so it actually makes like a triangle on a map. And so for me, that was no biggie about coming here for my career. But if you're not in that field, there's still so many opportunities for you. If you haven't heard yet, if you're a techie, Apple, Meta, and Google are all coming to town over the next couple of years. And you can already see like some of the construction going on. You can see some of the changes going on in the neighborhoods surrounding those areas. Gentrification. And so if you're a person that's in that industry, you would be able to benefit from it. If you're a person that's into medicine, of course, there's two of the top medical schools. Actually, there's more than the two medical schools here in general, but the two top medical schools, Duke is here and UNC Chapel Hill. And of course, there's a plethora of other opportunities as well. If you want to do law, the North Carolina General Assembly is right in downtown Raleigh. If you want to do work in retail, or you want to work in marketing, if you want to work like in the restaurant industry, or not, like there's plenty of opportunities for that as well. But I just wanted to name like the big three that everyone does look for when coming to town. So next I want to talk about like entertainment and activities and creating like a social life here. So for me, I found that I made most of my friends, if not all of them, through like the Bumble BFF app. I didn't find it very easy to make friends in my workplace, but I think it could just be the industry that I'm in. Now, obviously, I work a remote job, but my first year here, it was an all in-person role, and I just didn't find it very easy to make a lot of friends outside of friends at work that I could be friends with outside of work. So it just depends on where you work and your coworkers, but most of my friends were from Bumble BFF, and I thought it was really easy to make friends that way. It's a good variety of people, different backgrounds on there, but as always, use your caution, exercise caution when going on Bumble meetups and making new friends that way. As far as like activities and events and things to do, there's museums, there's hiking, there's festivals, there's live music. Sometimes concerts do come to Raleigh, but the bigger artists tend to go to Charlotte, but sometimes they'll do both Charlotte and Raleigh. So I would say keep that in mind. If you're a person that's into beers and drinking, there are tons of breweries and tons of bars. Of course, there's like activities like going to the movies. They're building a Top Golf in Durham. There's something called Drive Shack, which is just the same as Top Golf. I haven't been, so I don't know exactly what the differences are, but it's essentially the same thing. And then there's like axe throwing and escape room, things like that. So there's plenty of activities to do. As far as like entertainment and activities go, the only thing I have an issue with is the nightlife. So most of my experience with the nightlife is being in DC. I moved here from PG County, Maryland, and so I'm used to going to DC and there being a plethora of places to go. And obviously, I wasn't expecting it to be the same in North Carolina. This is very, very different. Raleigh's just not a very big city, but I kind of was just looking for some diversity in that department. For me, I just felt like there isn't really a lot of spaces available for people of color. More specifically, as a Black person, there was not a lot of bars and like lounges for Black people. I feel like when I first moved here, there were a couple. I think there were like 3 or 4. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of those places eventually they couldn't afford to keep their space, and so they eventually lost it, and then they turned it into like some American Grill sports bar. But for me, I don't mind intermingling with different races or anything like that. It's just that sometimes you just want to be around people where you can kind of relate to them on a more day-to-day basis. You share the same interests as far as like music goes and clothing and just being able to relate to someone that looks exactly like you in an environment that's supposed to be kind of like where you can kind of let your guard down a little bit and be yourself is really important to me. So that is one thing that I would say isn't here in Raleigh. There isn't like a lot of space available for people of color. However, again, I am only speaking as a Black woman. I'm not sure about people that are of Latinx or Asian descent. I can't speak for them, but for me as a Black woman, I just felt like there wasn't a lot of space held or available to me. I also feel like when I would go to certain places, I would be the only Black girl there, or my friends and I would be the only Black people there. And I feel like we wouldn't necessarily get stares, but people would do like a double take. And then I just kind of had to like pull out my little Nicki Minaj when she was like, my money is real long too. I can be here in this space too. So I will say that is just like an issue for me. I just think like, I'm just really proud of who I am and where I come from and what I look like, that I'm not embarrassed to say that I like to hang out and be in a space where I can feel safe and be around people that look like me and have a similar culture as me. I don't have an issue with going to places where where it's not necessarily a space for me. I don't mind it, but it's not my preference. So I can say that ever since COVID happened and a lot of those spaces were no longer available, my experience with nightlife has gone down a whole lot. Like I don't really go out a whole lot anymore. So it just depends on if you're a person that's into nightlife or not. For me, sometimes I just find like it's a good way to unwind after a long week, listening to some great music, making new friends, hanging out with friends, and just sharing your experiences and just being unapologetically you and showcasing where you come from and things like that. It's just important to me to have access to that, and essentially that is one of the reasons why I decided to leave Raleigh. So there's that. Other thing that I want to talk about or add in for entertainment and activities, if you're a person who loves sports, you might need to be a little bit flexible with either the sports that you like or your willingness to travel. So in North Carolina or in the Carolinas, their football team is the Panthers and the basketball team is the Charlotte Hornets. Neither one of those teams play here, obviously, in Raleigh-Durham, so you would have to travel the 2.5 hours to Charlotte. Now, if you're a person who likes hockey, we do have the Hurricanes. They play at the PNC Arena in Raleigh. And if you're a person who likes baseball, they do have a minor league team called the Durham Bulls, I believe, and their stadium is located in Durham. So if you're a person that's like into sports, there's also college sports available. So of course, UNC and Duke games. There's also NC State. There's also North Carolina Central University, and I want to say there's Shaw University as well. I want to say those are like those first ones are like the main ones, so that everyone kind of gets really hyped over the topic of the environment here. So I will say that Raleigh-Durham is Raleigh and Durham are both small cities. I don't even consider Charlotte to be a big city, but most people, like, compared to Raleigh and Durham, they think Charlotte's a big city. But coming from the DMV area, I know it's not a big city. So, but I can definitely say that it's different from when I grew up in South Carolina, that there is a little bit of more activity than it would be for, say, like if you lived maybe in a little bit more of a slower paced environment. If you're a person that likes the cold, you're not like, you look forward to super cold temperatures and snow every winter, this is not the place for you, because I think it probably snowed here once. I think it was like a nice little dusting, and again, coming from the north, everyone was freaking out, and I was like, it's just a dusting, it's not even enough to even do anything. But if you're a person that looks forward to like the snow and super cold temperatures, this is not for you. It does get cold here a little bit, where you can wear like nice coats and jackets, but not like your big wool coat that you would wear, or like your huge thick puffers. Kind of just like, some people, they just make it work with like pullovers and half zips. For me, as far as summer goes, it gets very hot. I'm a person that prefers a dry heat, and I don't like humidity because I just feel like it makes me just feel so dirty and my hair doesn't like it at all. So, but it does get very humid here, even after the summer months, like in September and October, especially this year in 2022. It's been very humid lately, so keep that in mind. Public transportation. I will say that I think that the public transportation here is great. For me, my experience is with their Go Triangle system. I used to go to work where they charged us for parking, but we got a free bus pass, and on the bus was usually all those of us that worked at this facility. And so for me, I just thought it was like a better choice. It was like a no-brainer, and I thought it was very easy to navigate and follow. I never encountered anything like scary or violent on any of these like buses that I was taken to and from work, or even just like passing through and looking at people at the bus stop and things like that. I've never seen anything super crazy. It's very easy to take. You can easily cross over between Raleigh-Durham and Chapel Hill. You just gotta kind of have to know where you're going and things like that. Traffic isn't really horrible here, especially from coming up north, where it's like traffic all the time, where I'm like, don't you guys have a job to be on? But here, it's just like most like the commute is difficult during those normal hours. So like the hours that people go to work, so like probably like 7:30 to like 9, or in the afternoons or evenings between like 4:30 and 6. Like those normal like rush hour times, it does get busy here. Another thing about transportation, I will say that the airport here is pretty small. The Raleigh-Durham airport is a Southwest hub. So if you're a person who loves Southwest, this is a great area for you. They even have their own terminal where it's all Southwest flights. I will say that sometimes when traveling, it's just a little bit difficult because for some reason I feel like any flight that I find, I have to do a layover when coming from Raleigh. I don't know why, but most of my flights include a layover, so just something to think about and keep in mind if you're a person that doesn't like a whole bunch of layovers or you prefer nonstop flights. It also probably depends on your provider or your airline of choice as well, but just keep in mind that Raleigh-Durham is a smaller airport. The bigger airport would be the Charlotte location, and that's about 2.5 hours away. But I know sometimes when the deal is really good, you will hop on the road and drive up to Charlotte or drive to that airport that's giving that deal. So just to keep that in mind. If you're looking for walkability, I would say your best bet is to live in a downtown area. So whether that's downtown Raleigh or downtown Durham, or even in like downtown Cary or like Fenton, the Fenton Cary area. For me, walkability wasn't really a big deal, honestly. Like I was kind of just like tunnel vision when I was moving to North Carolina. All I thought about was the fact that I was moving here for work, so I didn't really consider a whole bunch of anything else. But if you're a person that doesn't drive, or you prefer to walk everywhere or bike everywhere, then those probably are your best bets as far as where to live. Speaking of living, I will say that the apartments here are a lot cheaper than Maryland, more specifically Baltimore, Maryland, or the PG County, DC area. I did look it up online, and the cost of living in North Carolina is 11% less than the area up north. But again, that was only at the time of shooting this video, and we all know that inflation is constantly fluctuating. So just keep that in mind when moving to a new area. Just because cost of living is lower doesn't necessarily mean that things will be cheaper. So speaking of living, if possible, come and visit and check out the apartments in person. I do know some people, they kind of just move on a whim. They look at the pictures online, they sign their lease and hope for the best when they get there. I have too much anxiety to do something like that. I need to actually be in the space because sometimes things just don't look like the photos. But I feel like the cost of apartments is definitely going up. I know where I'm at right now. When I first moved here in October 2020, my rent was like $11.97, and now my rent is if I was to renew today for another year, this exact same apartment would be $1,600. So let that tell you. My apartment is 842 square feet, and I have a sunroom instead of a balcony. So I'll let you do what you may with that information, but just saying. So I feel like the biggest thing that people worry about, especially us women, is the safety of an area when moving or looking for an apartment. And I will say to, again, exercise caution. I personally haven't experienced anything that made me feel unsafe, but I also am a person, I'm a true crime girly, so I'm always like looking at my surroundings and paying attention about who I am, looking for red flags, being mindful of who I'm with, like all that stuff. So but I will say that, like with every place in the world or in the US, there is violence that takes place, and so you should always just exercise safety. I will tell you guys that North Carolina is a state where I believe it's stand your ground, but I know for sure that people do have concealed carry license here, so do what you will with that information. Every city has its downfall, and sometimes you just never know. It just varies day to day. A place can be safe one day and less safe the next week, or some place can be unsafe one day and more safe the next week. It just varies. So I just think it's really important to just be mindful and do your own research about where you're living and the history as well. Read the reviews about the apartments, read the reviews about the areas. I also think that you can read like police reports, and there's like websites available that can kind of give you information about the crimes in that area and what types of crimes there are. So yeah, that's just my experience with safety. Always exercise caution, even if people tell you that nothing ever happens here. Always remember to lock your doors and say no to strangers with candy, okay? Overall, I would say that moving to this area is you would definitely have to kind of assess the type of person that you are and what you're looking for. For me, I feel as though my time is kind of up here. I came here and it served its purpose for me, and that purpose for me specifically was to grow my career, and I've done that, and I've been able to experience different great things along the way, but I just feel like now it's time for me to move on to my next adventure. Overall, I feel as though living here in North Carolina has been a great experience, and I would never like write it off as me never coming back here again. But let me know down in the comments if you have any additional questions or if there's anything I can provide any insight on for you. I really hope that you guys found this video very helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!